Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Wally Weasel. And here we are with an actual video this time. Yes, not a live stream, but a video. A video that is basically detailing my thoughts on the Fallout TV show, Season 2. Better late than never, I guess. When was the teaser released? Like 2 months ago? Back in August, I think? So, yeah, strike while the iron is perfectly cold and frozen and all that stuff. I'm going to break this up into 3 parts. All right. The first part is going to be what I believe the ending of New Vegas is. The second part will be the wants. And while I tried to figure out something like I wouldn't want, I kind of talked myself out of at least one of them, and then I couldn't think of anything else. So instead, the third part will instead be the next. What I mean by that is basically what I think Bethesda will do in regards to, advertising this series, this season, sorry. I know I'm saying a lot. I'm sorry. It just keeps coming. I'm going to try and watch them from now on. So, yeah, because, for the first season, there really wasn't that much in terms of, games and such. No remasters, no announcements, not even really much of anything in Fallout 76. There was, like, a vault suit. And that was it. So I think this time around, given the popularity of the first season, it just makes sense for them to do something. And by this point, yes, they have announced something. We'll get into that. But I think they could do just a little bit more. Because, it's their bread and butter. It's what basically brought Fallout back onto the map. So they kind of, owe it to us, damn it. They did all the work creating that series. We sat here and watched it and then talked about it and, complained and raved. They owe us, as a loyal viewer. So, let's just get right back into things. The wants. Obviously. No, not the wants. The ending, sorry. Yes, the ending. Let's just go over the 4 potential endings. Now, when I'm thinking about an ending for the game, I am thinking about what would make the most sense when it comes to developing for a TV show. That means leaving the most amount of options open and, basically leaving a Fallouty. So that means that we can look through the endings. I'm not going to look at anything end credits wise from the very last episode. I know a lot of people look at that and say, "Whoa, man, that's pretty rough for Vegas." But no, to me, that's just basically flavor. It's just stuff to show off during the end credits. I wouldn't take that as canon personally. But if you want to, that's fine. That's fine. I'm trying to look at this from another perspective. So, the 4 endings obviously are the NCR, the Legion, Mr. House, and Independent. So if we look at the 4 endings, I don't believe that we can count the NCR ending as the real ending to Fallout New Vegas. Given the events of the Fallout TV series, the NCR is basically treated as being on their back legs. Now, obviously, the NCR is a lot bigger than what they were shown as being in the first season of the show. However, I don't believe that they would keep much of a presence in New Vegas if they were having major issues, such as having an entire major settlement of theirs being nuked. And obviously with survivors of Shady Sands, rather than going into New Vegas where it could potentially be seen as safer, they instead went into the vaults, or at least one of the vaults. So that, and we did kind of see, enough of the NCR. I'm not going to say that there won't be any NCR presence in the second season. I just think it will be muted. So I don't think that the NCR ending will be the valid ending. And again, I'm just looking at this from a TV show's producer's perspective. I'm not one, but I imagine if I were to do a season, I would want the season where I can be the most creative with what's going on. And when it comes to the NCR, basically law returns to the Mojave. At least it seems that way. Enough law seems to have returned where you wouldn't really get as much chaotic situations that we see throughout the trailer. So, no, I don't think it's the NCR. Mr. House is, I believe, in the same vein. He does bring a lot of order to New Vegas. And when you have a show that is like Fallout, that is all about, order, then it gets kind of... I mean, you have like the potential for downtime. You go to the Strip and it's more in control. Freeside is not as dangerous, but again, it does remove the potential for surprises. And I think that would be what people would rather have. Not a lot of boardroom talks, more chaotic moments, in a Fallout series. So I don't think Mr. House would be the ruler of New Vegas. I do think that he's still alive, though. I possibly just left alive by the courier in the tank to basically, watch New Vegas burn, as it were. So, I don't believe it's NCR. I don't believe it's Mr. House. Let's talk about the Legion. Is the Legion in command? And to that I say no. No, I don't believe that the Legion is in command, because if the Legion were in command, then where were they during the first season? They had already made plans to not just stop in the Mojave. They wanted to keep going. They would have gone into California and pushed the NCR back toward the Pacific, and then possibly even further if they could, if they could like invent water skis and such. So just on that fact alone, that we don't see any sign of the Legion, no banners, no soldiers, no ruined bits of armor, no wastelanders wearing little football pads or anything like that, nothing. I don't think the Legion invaded into the NCR territory. Now again, this is just a few years after the events of New Vegas, but still, I don't think that the Legion would just sit by and watch while Caesar or even Leganis, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's it, would take control of New Vegas. I think they would basically just move on and leave New Vegas as part of their territory. So, yeah, I don't think it's the Legion. I don't think the Legion is... obviously, the Legion isn't gone. We saw them in the teaser trailer, for crying out loud. And in fact, I have a note about them later on. So, we'll get to them. Now, obviously, this leaves the independent New Vegas ending. The ending that I believe would cause the most amount of chaos, the most amount of accepted chaos for a TV show called Fallout. A second season of Fallout. Everyone is basically doing everything. It is just anarchy. Yes Man has promised that at some point he will return. Oh, so will he return? This does remind me. I really should have put this in Mr. House. This, as it says in the description, this video is not scripted. So yeah. Another reason I believe that Mr. House is alive is because we see the Ghoul and Victor. Obviously, when you kill Mr. House, Victor goes with him. For whatever reason, because he just kind of shows up as a blank screen when you pass him by in the penthouse. Should you kill him, Mr. House? So yeah, the fact that we see him obviously means that Mr. House has to be alive. according to my logic. So yeah, the ending, I believe, is the independent ending. So we will see if that's true, and we will see if they go through with it. All right. Now, let us go on and talk about the wants. First and foremost, as I was about to spoil before I got to the ending, we need Ron Perlman recapping the first season. He doesn't need to talk about the events or what have you, going back and forth. This is what happened. This is what happened. No. Let's get him doing it as though he were in fact or doing the intro of a game. Like the whole war never changes. This is what's going on. Old world values seeping into the new frontier is a line I thought up when it explains the vaults of Vault 31, 32, and 33, which is really all you really need to say. Old world values seeping into the new world frontier, because that is basically what is going on with those vaults. So, stuff like that. Just be, colorful in describing the first season, because we need Ron Perlman in the Fallout TV show. Let's not do what Illumination did with Super Mario. Come on, get this right, guys. Get this right. All right, so this is a kind of half want and kind of half not want, but I'm kind of talking myself into it. And that is the first super mutant. I don't think when we eventually see a super mutant that we should see them as a horde. We should really see them as a threatening force in the Mojave, or the sort of confusing force. And that for the latter part, it could be Marcus. We could run into him. He would have no reason to leave a independent New Vegas, because I doubt many people would want to go to a home established by super mutants, where super mutants are, bound and determined to keep it safe. So maybe we see Marcus. He's kind of a big name in the Fallout world. He, being in Fallout 2, he was involved, not in a way that we could see, but in Fallout the original, and obviously New Vegas. So yeah, the other potential first super mutant is Thaddeus, the Brotherhood of Steel guy who had his foot broken, took something from the snake oil salesman, and was declared basically undead, or in other words, a ghoul. Now, I don't know about you, but when a ghoul takes an arrow into the neck, I would assume that they would still die. I mean, that one ghoul that, the ghoul, Cooper Howard, shot in the head still died. So why wouldn't an arrow through Thaddeus's neck kill him? And to me, I believe he may have been given a certain strain of FEV. So would that turn him into a super mutant? Perhaps inside of a season, making him one of the primary antagonists of Season 2. Someone who we encounter towards the end of the series as a major threat. Maybe we see him fighting a Deathclaw as well. I don't know, maybe. Or whatever. Just a thought. Now, at first I didn't like the idea of Thaddeus becoming a super mutant, but again, the more I thought about it, the more it just kind of makes sense, because the FEV has always just been a magical substance that does whatever the writers want in Fallout lore. They make super intelligent raccoons, and then they get taken out of the game, and then they get left mentioned in the game. So are they canon? Are they not? They make dogs into big giant snarling beasts, and so on. So who knows what this potential strain, which could have been altered by the snake oil salesman. They just had to explain that to, basically like a watered down version. So maybe it's like a slow changing process for Thaddeus. We will see. I don't think we have heard the last of what happened with him there. Now we get into some of the stuff that would be from New Vegas into the second season. And that is cameo companions. Now, I don't want to see too many companions played out in various roles. Maybe in the background, maybe they have a line or two, or in some cases, maybe they actually do something. Something that I thought would be kind of cool is you see Lucy being taken into the Legion, and I'll talk about my thoughts on that in a bit. Maybe it's as she's standing there in the Legion being surrounded, perhaps about to be executed, a sniper takes out a couple of Legionnaires, and we find out that it's Boone. End of episode. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something cool? That's not something that puts Boone on the spot. That's just something for fans of New Vegas to go, oh my god, it's Boone. That's so cool. They've thrown in a companion that would still potentially be alive, given that this is only happening a few years after the events of New Vegas, and I doubt that Boone would just put his weapon aside and not do much. I haven't really thought about what the other companions would do, but if, for instance, they're going to bring back Raoul, they do have to bring back Danny Trejo. Come on. Do that. Do that, or just don't do it at all, So let's get back onto the Legion. I mentioned them a couple times already, with their ending not being what it is, but they are still Legion strong, obviously, and they are bound and determined to perhaps invade the streets of New Vegas once again. Or, not... Okay, well, this will be the first time they would invade the streets of New Vegas, but maybe they're just planning on invading New Vegas, seeing it in a chaotic state. So now they feel that they have the opportunity to either take the dam or New Vegas itself. And something I thought about is it Kaiser still in charge? This, because there is a chance to heal him, but there's also a chance to not heal him from his tumor. And we only really see someone in charge from behind. Again, this could be Kaiser. He could be dead, and this could be just a trick of timeline manipulation to make it seem as though he's there when Lucy is brought into the Legion. We don't know. And, I figure if they're going to have a new leader of the Legion, then, they can get semi-creative with the name, go like Augustus or Julius. I kind of feel like a name like Augustus would work better in a Fallout setting. Have him become like the new leader of the Legion, and maybe as a result of him being the leader, they take a softer approach towards women. They don't view them still as strong fighters, but maybe that's why they're not as rough with Lucy when they're kind of leading her through around. I mean, she still could be a prisoner. We only really see it for like a brief moment, but you never know. Alright, so the next bit will be kind of a rapid fire, and then we'll get to what I believe would be next. Although I do have one don't. I did kind of lie about that. That's my bad. But we'll get to that after these final ones, and that is references to the DLC. And these are not just references that are like, let's do an episode in the Big Empty, or let's have, Maximus find the vault that, or not the vault, the chamber that was used by Father Elijah. No. We don't need any of that. we could just have stuff happen in the background that, like Easter eggs, that players of the game would look and know what's going on. So, for instance, a Wastelander being teleported away as they're walking through a drive-in. Like what's that one? Huh? As Lucy and Cooper are going around through the world, they might see "You Can Go Home" signs. And Lucy might take that to mean "You can go home back to the vault." Or maybe Cooper is like, "You can't go home." Not really, because, his home is destroyed. So, but, again, players of the game would know what those signs mean. Another bit would be "Hushed Burn Man Talks." As we know, he is basically a name that is forbidden from being mentioned within the Legion, but he's not forbidden from being mentioned by anyone else. And with events of Honest Hearts, maybe his legend has grown. And last but not least, someone being kicked out of a casino for using Sierra Madre chips. Again, just a reference, just someone being kicked out in front of Lucy, maybe. And, you got like one of the bouncers like, "Hey, these chips are no good here. What's going on? We've never even heard of this casino. What are you trying to pull?" And, people are like, "Wow, that's the Sierra Madre. That means we've got some dead money going on." Maybe he left with all the good gold bullion as well. So those are all my wants. And let's get to my one don't. My one don't. And it's a big one. I'm pretty sure in discussions, because honestly I haven't looked into too many discussions. These are all my thoughts. If these are reflective of anyone else's thoughts, completely coincidental, I do apologize if I'm stepping on anyone's toes. It's just the way of it. As I said, I only really watched reaction videos, like maybe 2 reaction videos, and that's really about it. I haven't read anything. So again, anything purely coincidental, and I do apologize, because obviously then I can't advertise your videos. But if you've come up with anything the same, feel free. And I believe, as I say that, it's because this one is probably the most contentious, or the most controversial, possibly the most discussed. And that is, will the courier be shown? And I don't want them to be shown. If they're referenced, I want them to be referenced in past tense and with as few descriptives as possible, because the courier, I feel, is not the Fallout character. The courier is us, the player, as it has been in the game. So when you specifically detail out the courier, you're not only eliminating some of the ways that people have approached the game, and obviously you're going to upset people with that, and you don't want to upset your fans, especially when you want them to spend money. You want to keep them as well entertained as possible. So any references to the courier should be past tense and with as few descriptives as possible. Like there's this guy, or there's this person, who did this one thing, and it really helped us out, or whatever. Just like, maybe there's some people who revere the courier for all that they've done. Like only a god could have done what the courier has managed to do. So, maybe there's like a cult. Maybe there's a church. Wouldn't that be something if that's kind of the legacy that the courier has left behind? Because I would say the courier does indeed leave the Mojave behind, because perhaps maybe they don't have anything left. I don't know. That's just my thoughts. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. I'm probably right. As always. Okay, well, as always. Okay, so that is that. Let's get on to the next. And the next is, as I've said, what Bethesda will sell to us alongside Fallout Season 2. And I'm sure a lot of people want a Fallout New Vegas remastered, which definitely makes sense. This is the time to do it. You've got a TV show set in New Vegas. You had one of the most successful remasters in the form of Oblivion. Yes, there are some controversies about that, but overall, it was perhaps one of the most well-received remasters, at least in the last little while, or at least in terms of, Bethesda re-releases. So they could do it again for New Vegas, or they could do like a double pack release maybe, which would be kind of cool, New Vegas and Fallout 3. I doubt it, but you never know. I mean, Bethesda has been awfully silent for the last while when it comes to gaming. Has there ever been any Starfield news within the while? Since their last DLC? We haven't heard anything really on Elder Scrolls in at least a few years. So maybe they're working on one, and the company that did the remaster on Oblivion is working on another. Maybe that would be rather neat. But I would just be happy with one. I don't need both, but it would be kind of fun. And obviously, the other thing, it doesn't really, I don't think, really entices a lot of people. But whatever Fallout 76 is doing, and they have already announced something that they're doing, which it's kind of nervous on me because of the way Fallout 76 does their updates. But that is inviting the Ghoul, Cooper Howard, into Appalachia as part of a new quest line, and I'm assuming new set of Radiant quests, which is the bounty hunting system. So, yeah, there's that. I never really. No, I guess it would kind of make sense for him, but we will see what they do with him. I'll be playing it live when it comes out, exploring the new area, but my hopes are kind of dwindled. The other thing, obviously, is a new season that could start right around the start of Fallout Season 2, and it would basically be all New Vegas paraphernalia. We've already seen quite a bit in this past season with Saturnite and Sunset Sarsaparilla and a few other tidbits. So, yeah, they could just go all out with more. They could introduce the Proton Inverted Axe, they could introduce different armor sets, they could introduce different outfits, and so on. So yeah, there's plenty to do when it comes to Fallout and what they could release. So yeah, those are just my thoughts on what I feel a Fallout Season 2 could look like. Not saying that's what it should look like. If none of these things come to pass, I'm not going to be ranting or anything like that. So any thoughts you have, if you want to point out the fact that a lot of these are on other people's lists, then go right ahead and link me in the stuff. Because as I said, I haven't done any outside looking on this. So yeah, in that case, it'll just be great minds thinking alike, perhaps. So yeah, in the meantime, thank you all for tuning in, and I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.